Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're specifically going to talk about, in my humble opinion, there is a path that we can use to stop playing Dungeons and Dragons and start using Dungeons and Dragons to make ourselves better people. And we can do that through the POHEC, the the path of optimum human exploration by class, and today we explore the Barbarian class. Okay? All right. So this is part of a playlist. You should watch it in the order it appears in the playlist for full context. All right, let's talk about the Barbarian. So the Barbarian is an incredibly exciting. I think the Barbarian is probably the most exciting class in Dungeons and Dragons. And basically, it is a class that is fueled by rage, right? So when we look at the Barbarian, what aspect of humanity do we use the Barbarian to explore about ourselves? What aspects about our own humanity do we use the Barbarian to explore? And the answer is aggression. Okay. Now, the Barbarian specifically uses rage, but they also can intimidate, and overall, they're by far the most aggressive class in all of Dungeons and Dragons. And so, the aspect of humanity that we use the Barbarian to explore is aggression. So let's talk about this. So first of all, just like the fighter, okay, we are not talking about aggression to defeat any of our foes in IRL, right? Basically, in America, no Dungeons and Dragons player or any other citizen in the United States of America has any right or ability to use rage or aggression to punish someone who has wronged them, right? Punishing someone who has wronged another person, that is the purview of only the U.S. government, only U.S. law enforcement, only the U.S. military, and only our intelligence services. No single person can ever do that, right? So what are we looking at then? How are we looking at aggression from Barbarian? What are we doing with it? Well, actually, the Barbarian uses aggression, uses rage to build momentum, to strike and succeed, to strike and succeed. And each successful strike of doing damage and actually debilitating, right, the things that stand against the Barbarian fuels their rage and allows them to do more and more damage, right? Now, where have we seen this in IRL? This has been very, very clearly, perfectly demonstrated in American politics recently in 2016. So in 2016, we got a very frightening president in America. His name was Donald Trump. It was a dark time. It was a very dark time between 2016 and 2020 under Donald Trump. He used the Republican Playbook. The economy was ballin'. It was incredibly robust, and chicken in every pot, 2 cars in every driveway at the macro level. Not at the there certainly was exceptions, but everything else was a terrifying hexscape. Like, it was like people's relationships were worse. There was just a ton of bad things that were happening. And overall, it's the first time in America we really had a president who were like, I love these people and I hate these people, right? Because of one distinct attribute. And he just said it nonstop. Like, he would give respect and kindness and tolerance to one group and then just backhand, with his speech and with policies others. So it was a very dark time, right? So what happened, right? Well, first of all, the election of Donald Trump absolutely shocked Americans, right? And more than anybody else, a lot of international and national news sources said women were really shocked, because most women were like, this guy is clearly not a pro-woman person. He used women in terrible ways throughout his life, and so women were really shocked that he had been elected. Well, what ended up happening was, when he was elected, a lot of women became furious. They became enraged. They became aggressive in their response to seeing this shocking event, right? Now, they had to manifest that rage and point it in the right direction. And that's what the Barbarian lets us explore, right? And what they did was, in numbers that had never been before seen in America, Women, the first thing they did was they all got together in a lot of protests, right? And there was a lot of talking, and they were like, what can we do? We're so frightened by what we've seen. We're so angry by what we've seen. We're so enraged by what we've seen. What can we do, right? And they had discussions, and you know what they decided in these protests? They said, we're going to run. We need to run against him. All right, the protests aren't enough. We need to run. And in numbers that had never been seen before, the rage of American women over the election of Donald Trump turned into literally thousands of women running locally, running at the state level, and running at the national level, right? And so they used their rage to strike, right? And they got this distinct benefit. Now, here's the kicker, right? This is why the Barbarian is so important. 2-3 years later, the same news organizations that had reported that the rage of women had allowed them to run tons and tons and tons of women candidates, the rage had dissipated. And without the passion and the frustration of the shock of the election, very little was happening on the front of women activists. And that the women who had been elected were really struggling to get anything passed, and they were having a hard time showing the value of electing them, right? Because of systems that were already in place, a lot of people were like, hey, we elected you women, where's the benefit? And many people were not showing the benefit, and the rage that had allowed this women's movement to move forward had cooled. And this was talked about very, very openly in national and international news sources, right? That the anger no longer had momentum, right? And there was this discussion of how, basically keeping the anger stoked was on the minds of American women activists, right? How do they keep the women base angry and activated, right? Fascinating, right? Well, the Barbarian is all about this. It's all about keeping a burning platform of aggression activated and striking and succeeding and striking and succeeding and striking and succeeding and getting your goals done through the management of aggression, right? Now, we explore this in Dungeons & Dragons. We take this and we say, okay, I'm running a Barbarian in the Dungeon Master has started the campaign for me. They have presented this, this canvas this narrative canvas. Now, I'm going to run this Barbarian, and I'm going to learn about keeping anger stoked, and directing anger, and using anger, and managing anger, and timing anger, right, to achieve the goals I want to achieve, right? And women were like, hey, we want to, support progressive and liberal candidates in direct opposition to this conservative, regressive president we have, right? You, running the Barbarian, need to find your own analog in your own life. What are you trying to accomplish? And how can you acknowledge your aggression and then use your aggression and sequence your aggression so that it is used appropriately, properly, and you get the most figurative impact from your aggression, right? Now, I can hear you're like, Scott, what if I'm not an aggressive person, right? Well, you just need to look a little deeper, right? Like, you could take the most peaceful, calm, non-aggressive person, a person who thinks they're non-aggressive, and say, hey, so, you're pretty calm and chill about most things, right? How do you feel about harm to animals? You go get an aggressive person real fast, right? So and that's the other issue, is we are all aggressive. We are all human. There is aggression in us. The question is, where is it? Is it close to the surface? Is it sublimated? Is it deep down? The Barbarian allows us to explore this, to allow us to explore our own levels of aggression. What triggers our aggressions? And what levels of aggression are appropriate for a person? How do people respond to aggressiveness, right? And so what's the difference between persuasion and intimidation, right? All these things are explored through the Barbarian. And this fundamental aspect of your humanity, your aggression, is explored through the Barbarian. That's my humble opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.